Blood trickled down Willow Reed's temple as she stood alone at Cottonwood Springs train station, the bitter November wind of 1881 cutting through her torn wedding dress. Her hopes had been as white as her gown that morning, before everything shattered. Now, abandoned with nothing but a carpet bag, she trembled not just from the cold, but from betrayal, fear, and the sudden, crushing realization that she was utterly alone in the Colorado wilderness. Samuel Prescott had been tracking a notorious gang for 3 days when he spotted the solitary figure at the deserted station. The last train had departed hours ago, and night was falling fast. He urged his horse closer. Keeping one hand near his revolver caution was second nature to any man who'd survived 10 years as a bounty hunter in these parts. As he approached, the woman turned, revealing a face both beautiful and battered, her eyes a storm of defiance and desperation. "Madam," he called out, dismounting with the fluid grace of a man who'd spent most of his life in the saddle. "Station's closed till morning. You shouldn't be out here alone." Willow backed away, clutching her small bag to her chest. "I'm waiting for someone," she lied, voice steady despite her shivering. Samuel assessed her quickly, the bruised cheek, split lip, and telltale signs of a struggle evident in her disheveled appearance. The diamond ring she twisted anxiously on her finger caught the dying sunlight. A bride. A bruised bride. "Whoever did that to your face isn't worth waiting for," he said, shrugging off his long duster coat. Before she could protest, he draped it around her shoulders. "I'm Samuel Prescott. Town marshal sent me to check the station before nightfall." "I'm fine," she insisted, though her body betrayed her as she instinctively pulled his coat tighter. It smelled of leather, horses, and gunpowder, somehow comforting in its rugged honesty. "You're bleeding, shaking, and there's no train until tomorrow afternoon." Samuel's voice was firm but not unkind. "Come on, I can take you to the boarding house in town." Willow hesitated. "I have nowhere to go," she admitted finally, her voice barely audible above the wind, "and no money to pay for lodging." Samuel looked at her for a long moment, then gestured to his horse. "I've got a cabin outside town. It's not much, but there's a fire and food. You can stay the night, and I'll bring you back for tomorrow's train if that's what you want." Trust didn't come easily to Willow, not anymore. But as the temperature dropped and darkness fell, she realized she had little choice. She nodded once, clutching the stranger's coat around her like armor. Samuel helped her onto his horse before mounting behind her, maintaining a respectful distance as they rode. They traveled in silence for several miles, the rhythm of hoofbeats and the soft jingle of tack the only sounds between them. "Willow," she said suddenly. "Willow Reed, that's my name. Miss Reed," he acknowledged with a slight nod. "Mrs.," she corrected, then flinched. "At least I was supposed to be today." Samuel didn't press for details. In his experience, stories revealed themselves in their own time. Instead, he pointed ahead to a small cabin nestled against a backdrop of pines. Smoke curled from the chimney, and a lantern glowed in the window. "My neighbor checks on things when I'm away," he explained, noticing her questioning look. "Mrs. Holloway, good woman, nosy but good-hearted." The cabin was modest but well-maintained. A single room with a stone fireplace, small kitchen area, and a bed in the corner. A curtain partially concealed what appeared to be a washing area. "You can take the bed," Samuel said, busying himself with stoking the fire. "I'll sleep by the hearth." Willow stood awkwardly in the middle of the room, still wrapped in his coat. "Why are you helping me?" Samuel straightened, his tall frame silhouetted against the fire's glow. "Because you needed help," he said simply. "And because whoever left you like that deserves a bullet." He paused, seeing her flinch. "I apologize for speaking plainly." "No," Willow said quietly, "he probably does." She slipped off the coat finally, revealing the full extent of her ruined wedding dress. Samuel's jaw tightened at the sight of fingerprint bruises on her upper arms. "There's a clean shirt and trousers in that trunk," he said, pointing. "They'll be too large, but they're warm. I'll step outside while you change." When he returned with more firewood, Willow had transformed. His clothes engulfed her small frame, the sleeves rolled up multiple times, the trousers secured with a piece of rope. She'd washed her face, revealing more bruising along her jawline. Her golden brown hair, freed from its pins, cascaded down her back in waves. "Thank you," she said, gesturing to the clothes. "I couldn't bear to be in that dress another minute." Samuel nodded, setting down a basin of water. "You should clean that cut on your temple." "I have some whiskey to disinfect it." Willow sat by the fire, allowing him to tend to her wound. His large, calloused hands were surprisingly gentle as he dabbed at the cut. Up close, she noticed the fine lines around his eyes, not from age, as he couldn't be much past 30, but from squinting against the sun. His dark hair was overdue for a trim, and a thin scar ran along his jawline. "You're a bounty hunter," she said, noticing the wanted posters that had fallen from his saddlebag. "Sometimes," he admitted, "when the marshal needs help, otherwise I raise horses on a small spread about a mile from here." "Is that why you're tracking the Blackburn gang?" Samuel raised an eyebrow. "How'd you know that?" Willow nodded toward the posters. "I can read upside down. It's a useful skill for a school teacher." "You teach?" "I did. In Denver." She winced as the whiskey stung her cut. "Before I made the mistake of accepting a proposal from the school board president's son." Samuel waited, sensing there was more to tell. "Charles seemed perfect," she continued, her voice hollow. "Charming, successful, from a good family. We were to be married today and move to his new banking position in San Francisco." She touched her bruised cheek. "Then I discovered he'd been embezzling from his father's bank. When I confronted him this morning, he showed his true nature." "He did this to you on your wedding day." Samuel's voice was dangerously quiet. Willow nodded, tears finally breaking free. "He left me at the station with nothing, said I was worthless now that I knew his secret, that no one would believe me over him." Samuel handed her a handkerchief. "Some men don't deserve to be called men," he said. "What will you do now?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I can't go back to Denver. His family's too influential. I have a cousin in California, but no money to get there." "You need rest," Samuel said, standing abruptly. "We can figure things out tomorrow." That night, Willow slept fitfully in Samuel's bed while he kept watch by the fire. When nightmares jolted her awake, she found comfort in the steady presence of this stranger who'd shown more kindness in a few hours than her fiancé had in months. Morning brought clarity and pain in equal measure. Willow's body ached from Charles's assault, but her mind was clearer than it had been in weeks. She found Samuel outside, chopping wood with powerful, methodical strokes. "There's coffee on the stove," he said when he noticed her watching, "and Mrs. Holloway brought bread and preserves earlier." She wasn't surprised to find a woman here. Samuel's mouth quirked in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "I told her you're my cousin from back east. She didn't believe me, but she's too polite to say so." They ate breakfast in companionable silence. Afterwards, Samuel surprised her by asking, "Do you really want to leave on today's train?" "I don't know where else to go," Willow admitted. "You could stay," he said, then quickly added, "In town, I mean. Cottonwood Springs needs a teacher. Our last one left to get married 3 months ago." Hope flickered briefly before reality extinguished it. "Charles will look for me. When he realizes I could expose him, let him come," Samuel interrupted, his hand instinctively moving to his gun belt hanging nearby. "This territory's a long way from Denver society." Willow studied him, trying to understand this man who'd extended such protection without asking anything in return. "Why would you do this for me? You don't know me." Samuel was quiet for a long moment. "My sister," he finally said, "found herself in a similar situation 5 years ago. Her husband beat her badly. By the time I found out and reached their home in Kansas, she was gone. Pneumonia, they said, but it was the injuries that weakened her." Willow reached across the table and placed her hand on his. "I'm sorry." "I couldn't help her," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "But I can help you." That afternoon, instead of taking her to the train station, Samuel introduced Willow to Mayor Thompson and his wife. The town's need for a teacher was genuine, and within hours, Willow found herself with a position and a small room above the general store. "It's not much," Mrs. Thompson apologized, showing Willow the sparse accommodations. "It's perfect," Willow assured her, thinking of the alternative returning to Denver in disgrace or fleeing to an uncertain future. Samuel left her at the store with a promise to check on her the following day. That night, alone in her new room, Willow touched the fading bruises on her face and for the first time since her ordeal began, allowed herself to cry properly not just for what she'd lost, but for what she might have found in this small frontier town. Over the next few weeks, Willow threw herself into teaching. The schoolhouse was a simple one-room building with 28 students ranging from 6 to 16 years old. What the school lacked in resources, the children made up for an eagerness to learn. Samuel visited regularly, first under the pretense of bringing supplies for the school, then simply to see her. Their friendship grew slowly, carefully, like a tender shoot pushing through hard soil. He never pushed, never presumed, seeming to understand instinctively that Willow needed time to heal. December arrived with a blanket of snow and preparations for Christmas festivities. Willow found herself included in every community event, from decorating the church to planning the school's holiday program. For the first time in her life, she felt truly valued for her contributions rather than her appearance or connections. "You've changed this place," Samuel told her one evening as he walked her home from a town meeting. "These children are learning things they never would have otherwise." "The town has changed me too," she admitted. "I'm not the same woman who arrived here." Samuel nodded, understanding in his eyes. "That frightened bride at the station seems like someone from a different life." "She was," Willow said softly, "though I still have her nightmares sometimes." They'd reached her door and Samuel hesitated before saying, "Mrs. Holloway's making Christmas dinner. Nothing fancy, but there'll be turkey. She asked if you'd join us." Willow smiled, touched by the invitation. "I'd like that very much." As Christmas approached, however, Willow's past caught up with her. She was arranging books in the schoolhouse when Mayor Thompson entered, his expression grave. "Miss Reed, there's a man asking questions about you in town, says he's your fiancé." Cold fear washed over her. "Charles is here. He's at the hotel, claims there was a misunderstanding and he's come to take you home." The mayor lowered his voice. "He looks respectable enough, but something doesn't sit right. I thought you should know before you run into him." "Thank you," Willow said, her mind racing. I need to, you need to stay right here," came Samuel's voice from the doorway. He entered, his expression thunderous. "I've already seen him. Fancy suit, gold watch, and a smile that doesn't reach his eyes." "I can't hide from him," Willow said, wringing her hands. "He won't stop until he finds me." "Then we'll make sure he finds exactly what he's looking for," Samuel replied, a plan already forming. That evening, Charles Watson entered the town's small saloon, scanning the room with the confidence of a man accustomed to deference. His gaze landed on Samuel, sitting alone at a corner table. "I understand you've been asking about me," Samuel said as Charles approached. "I'm looking for Willow Reed," Charles replied smoothly. "I was told you might know where she is." "Sit down," Samuel invited, his tone making it clear it wasn't a request. "Let's talk about the woman you abandoned at a train station after beating her on your wedding day." Charles's practiced smile faltered momentarily before returning. "There's been a misunderstanding." Willow was distraught. "She misinterpreted a situation and ran away. I've come to make things right." "By situation, you mean your embezzlement?" Samuel asked quietly. "Or perhaps your tendency to use your fists when questioned?" Charles's face hardened. "Whatever she's told you is a lie. Willow has always been imaginative. It's part of her charm, but also her flaw. Now, where is she?" "Safe," Samuel said, "and staying that way." "This doesn't concern you," Charles hissed, leaning forward. "She's my fiancée." "Not anymore," came Willow's voice from behind them. She stood in the saloon doorway, head high despite the fear in her eyes. "I've made a life here, Charles. A good one. Please leave and don't come back." Charles rose, his charm vanishing entirely. You think anyone will believe your accusations? My father has been informed of your activities, Samuel interrupted, placing several letters on the table. As has the banking commission in Denver and San Francisco. Miss Reed wasn't the only one who noticed discrepancies in your accounts. Charles lunged for the letters, but Samuel was faster, catching his wrist in a grip that made the banker's son wince. You have two choices, Samuel said calmly. Leave on tonight's train and face whatever awaits you in Denver, or I arrest you for assault right now. Either way, you're not taking Willow anywhere. The saloon had gone silent, every patron watching the confrontation. Charles looked around, realizing he had no allies here. This isn't over, he threatened, jerking his arm free. Yes, it is, Willow said firmly. Goodbye, Charles. They watched from the saloon porch as Charles boarded the evening train, his rigid posture betraying his fury. Only when the train disappeared into the distance did Willow allow her shoulders to slump. He'll be back, she whispered. Samuel shook his head. Not if he's smart. Those letters weren't bluffing. The Denver authorities have been building a case against him for months. Your former fiancé has bigger problems than you now. Relief washed over Willow, bringing with it an unexpected wave of tears. Without thinking, she turned to Samuel, who wrapped his arms around her as she cried. It's over, he murmured into her hair. You're free. That night marked a turning point. The threat that had loomed over Willow for weeks had dissipated, leaving room for something new to grow. As winter settled fully over Cottonwood Springs, Samuel and Willow's friendship deepened into something neither had expected. They spent Christmas Day at Mrs. Holloway's, surrounded by the warmth of friendship and community. Afterward, Samuel drove Willow home in his sleigh, the night clear and cold, stars brilliant overhead. I have something for you, he said, producing a small package wrapped in brown paper. Willow unwrapped it carefully to find a journal bound in soft leather, with her initials stamped in gold on the cover. Samuel, it's beautiful, she breathed, running her fingers over the tooled leather. Mrs. Thompson mentioned you used to keep a journal before. Everything happened. I thought maybe you'd want to start again, write your own story the way you want it to be. Touched by his thoughtfulness, Willow impulsively leaned forward and kissed his cheek. Thank you, not just for this, but for everything. Their eyes met in the moonlight, and something shifted between them, a recognition of feelings that had been building slowly but steadily. Samuel reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. Willow, he began, his voice unusually hesitant, I know it hasn't been long, and I understand if you're not ready, but I find myself thinking about you more than I probably should. A smile spread across her face. I think about you too. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. When they parted, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. I don't want to rush you. You're not, she assured him. Some things just feel right, even when they're unexpected. As winter gave way to spring, their relationship blossomed alongside the wildflowers that carpeted the valleys. Samuel began courting Willow properly, much to the delight of the townspeople who had watched their story unfold from the beginning. They took Sunday rides to his horse ranch, where Willow discovered a natural affinity for the animals Samuel bred and trained. He taught her to ride properly, not side saddle as she'd learned in Denver, but astride, free and confident. You should move out here, Samuel suggested one day as they picnicked near a stream on his property. The cabin's small, but I could build onto it, make it a proper home. Willow raised an eyebrow. Samuel Prescott, are you asking me to live in sin? He laughed, a deep, genuine sound that she'd come to treasure. I'm asking if you'd consider making this your home someday, with me as my wife. The word hung in the air between them. Wife. Once it had represented a cage, a loss of self. Now, with Samuel, it felt like a partnership, a beginning rather than an end. I'm not Charles, Samuel continued, taking her hand. I don't want to own you or change you. I just want to build a life with you, if you'll have me. Willow squeezed his hand. I know who you are, Samuel. You showed me the first night we met when you wrapped your coat around a stranger in need and asked for nothing in return. "Is that a yes?" he asked, hope evident in his voice. "It's a not yet," she answered honestly. "I need a little more time, but it's not a no." Samuel nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I've got all the time in the world for you, Willow Reed." Summer brought new challenges. A drought threatened crops, and a band of rustlers began targeting isolated ranches. Samuel's dual roles as bounty hunter and rancher kept him busy, often away for days at a time tracking stolen livestock. During one such absence, Willow made a decision. She'd been saving her teacher's salary, initially intending to build an emergency fund in case she needed to flee again. Now, she used part of it to purchase supplies and hire 2 young men from town to help with a project. When Samuel returned, dusty and weary from a week on the trail, he found Willow at his cabin. The small vegetable garden he'd started had doubled in size, and a new rose bush bloomed by the front step. "What's all this?" he asked, dismounting with a puzzled smile. Willow took his hand and led him inside, where he stopped in surprise. The cabin had been transformed. New curtains hung at the windows, a bookshelf stood against one wall, and a quilt she'd been quietly working on for months was spread across the bed. "I hope you don't mind," she said nervously. "I wanted to show you what our home could look like, together." Samuel's eyes widened as her meaning became clear. "Willow, are you saying—" "Yes," she interrupted, her heart full. "If you still want to marry me, my answer is yes." He lifted her off her feet in a jubilant embrace, spinning her around the cabin they would soon share. "I've wanted to marry you since I found you at that train station," he confessed. "Even bruised and crying," she teased. "Especially then," he said seriously. "Because even at your lowest, you were the strongest person I'd ever met." They were married in September 1882, almost a year after their first meeting. The ceremony took place under an arbor of wildflowers outside the cabin that was now their home. The entire town attended, along with Samuel's family from Texas, and to Willow's surprise and joy, her cousin from California. Instead of a traditional wedding gown, Willow wore a simple blue dress that matched her eyes. "No white this time," she told a scandalized Mrs. Thompson. "I'm starting fresh." As they exchanged vows, Willow thought of that cold November evening when a stranger had draped his coat around her shoulders, offering protection without condition. Now, as Samuel's ring slid onto her finger, she knew she'd found not just safety, but a love deeper than anything she'd imagined possible. Their first year of marriage brought both joy and trials. The drought worsened, forcing Samuel to drive his horses farther afield for water and grazing. Willow continued teaching, using her salary to help keep the ranch afloat during the hard times. When winter arrived again, it brought blessed rain and snow to replenish the parched land. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Samuel surprised Willow with a trip to the train station where their story had begun. "Why are we here?" she asked, shivering in the November chill. Samuel removed his duster, the same one he'd wrapped around her a year earlier, and placed it on her shoulders with a tender smile. "Because I wanted to remember where I found you," he said, pulling her close. "And to tell you that even though I gave you my coat that night, you've given me so much more in return." Willow leaned into his embrace, reflecting on how far they'd come. The station no longer represented abandonment and fear, but the beginning of the greatest love she'd ever known. "I have something to tell you," she said, looking up at him with shining eyes. "Something that makes today even more special." Samuel's brow furrowed in confusion, then cleared as understanding dawned. "Willow, are you?" she nodded, placing his hand gently against her stomach. "Come spring, there will be 3 of us." Joy transformed Samuel's face as he lifted her into his arms, spinning her in the same spot where they'd first met. As he set her down, he kept his coat wrapped tightly around her, protecting her and their unborn child from the cold. "I love you, Willow Prescott," he whispered against her lips. "And I love you," she replied, knowing with absolute certainty that the coat Samuel had wrapped around her that fateful night had truly been wrapped around her forever. In May 1883, Willow gave birth to a daughter they named Hope, a living symbol of what they'd found in each other. As Samuel placed their newborn in Willow's arms, she thought of how a single act of kindness had changed the course of both their lives. "She has your eyes," Samuel observed, his voice filled with wonder. "And your stubbornness," Willow replied with a tired smile. She certainly took her time arriving. By the time Hope turned 1, the ranch was thriving. Samuel's reputation for breeding quality horses had spread, bringing buyers from as far as Denver and Santa Fe. Willow had reduced her teaching to 3 days a week, splitting her time between educating the town's children and raising her daughter. They expanded the cabin, adding rooms as their family and prosperity grew. Samuel built a wide porch where they spent summer evenings watching the sunset, Hope playing at their feet. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't come to the station that night? Willow asked one such evening, her head resting on Samuel's shoulder. "No," he answered without hesitation, "because I was always meant to find you." As Hope grew, so did their family. A son joined them 2 years later, followed by twins, a boy and a girl, when Hope was 6. The small cabin evolved into a proper ranch house, filled with books, music, and laughter. Through the years, Samuel never lost the protective instinct that had first drawn him to Willow. The coat that had once sheltered her from the cold became a family heirloom, carefully preserved, a reminder of how their love story began. Willow continued to teach, eventually opening a small school on their property for ranch children too far from town. Her journal, Samuel's first gift to her, filled with entries chronicling their life together. The challenges of drought years, the joy of watching their children grow, the deep and abiding love that sustained them through it all. On their 20th anniversary, they returned once more to the train station. It had been modernized over the years, but the platform where they'd first met remained largely unchanged. "I still remember how you looked," Samuel said, his hair now streaked with silver but his eyes as kind as ever. "Standing here all alone, trying so hard to be brave." "I was terrified," Willow admitted, squeezing his hand, "until a handsome bounty hunter came along and changed everything." "Best decision I ever made," Samuel replied, "wrapping that coat around you." "Best decision I ever made was keeping it," Willow countered with a smile, "and the man who came with it." As they stood together on the platform where their journey had begun, Willow reflected on the extraordinary path that had led from that moment of desperation to a life richer than she'd ever dreamed possible. The bruised bride who had once shivered at the station had found not just warmth and protection in a stranger's coat, but a love that truly would last forever.